Welcome to Double Fries No Slaw. We're a few minutes late, but it is our first show of the new year. Did we do one of these? Yeah, we didn't do one of these last week. We did on Sunday. So shout out to us for being here another year. So Double Fries No Slaw, Richie TJ, presented by Guthrie's in Tallahassee. You can visit all three of their locations: 1818 West Tennessee, 2550 North Monroe, and 2870 over there on Appalachian Parkway. Richie, new year, new us. Not really, same us. But how's your day so far going?
Very good, man. You know, last week we talked. I was only on here for about 15, 20 minutes, and went off to Tampa to see the Saints just absolutely smack the Bucks. But was able to light up the Panther pack today as the Saints clinched the NFC South for the third straight year. Going to the playoffs. Haven't decided if I'm going to go to the game next week or not yet. Might sell it. You know, it's going to be the Eagles. It's going to be a lot of money. So I'll probably just take the money and watch at home. But NFC South champs, very happy. How about you, man?
Yeah, it's been good so far. Busy day. Got the Battle's End quarter zip on because we had a couple more commitments to go with 2 yesterday. So we'll talk about the transfer portal here in just a minute. But yeah, it's been a good day. We went to church this morning and then kind of just worked a little bit this afternoon. Had Red Zone on, so I didn't see much of the Bucs game on Red Zone today.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah. But, you know, even less on Red Zone was that snow game up in New England. All right, so let's start with that. I know you guys didn't tune in for NFL talk, but like, okay, did you see, you saw the weather in the New England Jets game.
It's a blizzard.
Do you love the Knowles enough to sit through that?
Maybe once, just to say I did.
I don't know, man.
You know, I went to the Florida State Notre Dame game.
I think that wasn't the same as that.
2018 or 19. Yeah, there's no snow, but it was like 23 degrees at kickoff. I think I would do it once just to say I did it, but it's not something I would do, week after week for the Knowles. I love Florida State, but no, that's not something I could do on a weekly basis.
Dude, I am such a sissy. I went to opening day of the Cubs and Cardinals at Wrigley, and it wasn't snowing, but it was like, 30, 40 degrees. And the wind up there, like I was pretty layered up, but just the wind on my
that wind will cut you.
Like I was putting my hands in my pockets because my fingers were so like that wasn't even. And I'll say like, the wind in Chicago is, coming off that lake. It is serious, but like I couldn't even take like 30, 40 degrees, let alone like the absolute downpour of snow where you can't even see anything. I don't know. It seems like a lot. Maybe I'm just a sissy. So, all right.
Imagine playing in that weather though. My goodness.
No, I couldn't. I mean, but all at the same time, I couldn't, I can't imagine playing D1 football in Tallahassee. So I don't know that it's too much different. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with some bad news. Not bad news. All right, we'll get the elephant out of the room. I haven't actually given takes on this. I put a video out on Friday afternoon about whether or not I thought Florida State should move on from some coaches. We talked a little bit about that on last week's show. And later that day, after I put that video out, Knowles 247 broke the news that earlier in December, every coach on the staff had been extended. Then the news had already been kind of officially made about Adam Fuller when there was some talk about, maybe him getting poached. Mike Norvell actually didn't get an extension, but all of his assistants did get extensions. Man, I've got some thoughts on that, Richie. It's kind of an awkward subject to broach. I know that, we talked about it a little bit last week. You made some comments, and then I don't know if you listened back, but after you got off, I echoed some of your thoughts. But man, I think it's a little. I mean, at the end of the day, I want to preface everything by saying Mike Norvell has led this program to a 13-0 record after a 10-3 record. And so he's built up a ton of equity. And at the end of the day, I think you have to trust his decision-making. And you can disagree with it. People that say like, oh, you shouldn't disagree with the man that's gotten us 13 wins in a row or 19 wins in a row, whatever. So I don't think anyone's perfect. I don't think anyone's infallible. And, every single one of you doubts him every time he calls a fourth down call that doesn't, make it. So like if you're allowed to doubt that, then I'm allowed to doubt coaching decisions. And so, yeah, I get it. I get that there's, the problem is, Richie, I think with anything in life, everything's just so black and white. Like there's no time for like nuanced conversations of like, oh yeah, you did just go 13-0, but we're not necessarily saying you need to fire people, but you certainly need improvement in certain areas. Yeah, we went 13-0, and I didn't think our offensive line was all that good. So is it okay to say like, hey, I hope the offensive line play gets better this year? We went 13-0, and I think there were times where I was kind of let down by the way that our secondary play. There are little things that can get better within any program. So all of the extensions announced, obviously a lot of frustration from FSU fans on a couple of extensions. We'll just be pretty upfront. Randy Shannon, John Papuchis. I've seen a lot of FSU media kind of come out and say, hey, this is not necessarily the way that we think this should go. From Bud Elliott to Jeff Cameron, posted a clip the other day of the Jeff Cameron show, talked a little bit about that. I've seen Zach at Knowles 247 talk about how he doesn't think recruiting at certain positions is up to par. And so I think my biggest takeaway, I'll shut up and let you get a takeoff, but biggest takeaway is that this was done like early in December. And so to do this, I guess before any of the signing stuff even went down was kind of interesting to me. I thought it was also interesting the timing of when it came out. Knowles 247 had said a few times, Chris had said, we've reached out and we've asked for this stuff and haven't heard back yet. They put it out at about 5 or 6 o'clock on Friday. That would lead me to believe that that's about when they got it. I don't think that they were just sitting on this info for weeks and weeks and weeks, just, waiting to catch FSU, fans at 5 p.m. on a Friday. I think that Florida State probably finally released that info at 5 p.m. on a Friday, kind of showing that, it's a news dump. We know that we're going to get some backlash for doing this. So we'll give it to them when everybody's getting off work and going and hitting happy hour, which again probably shows that they know that not popular decisions. Maybe maybe Florida State still fully stands by them and still believes in their guys. But I think the timing of the announcement certainly kind of showed that they know that that's not a popular decision, and hopefully things get better. But those are some of my kind of high overarching thoughts.
Yeah, for any of the PR people out there, if you're releasing something at 5, 6 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, evening, it's clearly not good news, right? You're doing that for a reason, and it's because you hope to get the most minimal blowback possible. It's frustrating. I said last week, I don't think I minced my words. I basically said I wanted Shannon and Papuchis gone, but clearly they're going to be here for another year. I stand by what I said last week, and if that gets me in trouble with some people in the Moore Center, so be it. But the recruiting has to take a step up at those positions specifically. And people have said Odell. I'm like, I don't know, man. Odell's been solid for the longest time. Last time I remember when Marvin Austin committed to North Carolina, and all of Florida State Nation wanted Odell gone, but he bounced right back. I don't question him. But Papuchis and Shannon both, they're not getting the job done. And ultimately, recruiting does reflect on the head coach. And I think that Mike Norvell needs to, I was hoping he would take a step back and reevaluate it. I am surprised that they went ahead and made all these extensions before signing day. Let's see who you close with and see what happens from there. And, the hope is that maybe next year, Shannon and Papuchis both get 5-star, high school prospects. Ron Dugans was almost gone. He was almost out of here. And then he got in Johnny Wilson, and then he signed Hakeem. And then, Keon Coleman comes in, and now Ron Dugans, his job feels safe as anyone on the staff. But you'd love to see something like that happen at linebacker or defensive end. It's just frustrating because linebacker and defense, and those are two positions that there are a lot of quality players in the Southeast. And it's not that you're losing kids, but you're losing them to your rivals. And that's frustrating. And great. We went back and got Marvin Jones Jr. in the portal on round 2. And that's the thing about high school recruiting. That means it's not as important anymore as it used to be. You can get him in the portal a year or two later. But it's frustrating when you can't close. And we knew Armando Blunt was not going to sign with Florida State. But why not? What did Papuchis do? And to some, certain extent, what did Norvell do? But Norvell can't do everything for this staff. He can't, hold his staff's hands through the recruiting rankings or through the recruiting waters and say, okay, this guy. No, these assistants have to pull their weight. And, the two you mentioned that I just mentioned have not been pulling their weight.
Yeah. And, I get all sides. There's a very valid argument to the fact that it's hard to it is hard to make staff changes. And
After a
Mike,
13-0 season, yeah, I get
yeah,
that's
the big thing
really
is
is tough. That is.
maybe my counter to that is you're not going to fire. I never expected Mike Norvell to just bring the hammer down and fire anyone. He didn't fire Coach Marv. He didn't fire Coach Woodson. What they did, he kind of helped those
Found
guys
homes for
get
them.
other jobs, right? And that is the way that I expected this to go. Richie, what about this? We have a 13-0. We have a 13, and the fan base that, again, it's very black and white, right? There's either one side that's like, fire him right now and put him out on the street and publicly hang him, and then there's the other side that's like, trust Norvell and he could never do any wrong. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, and you might be a little more to the right, a little more to the left. But like most things in America, like the loudest people are just like, fire him today and tar and feather him, and then, Norvell could never do wrong. How about this, Richie? We have a 13-0 staff. For the you can't fire people after 13-0. Richie, we have a 13-0 staff, and no one got poached off of it. Like nobody got poached off this staff. So I know you guys are saying, "Oh man, this staff just got us to 13-0, and how could you ever doubt Mike Norvell for this?" Which is a fact. Yes, the staff did help us get to 13-0. But why did nobody else want any of these coaches? Why did nobody else want? Fuller. Fuller was the one that I think there was some concern around. There was some talk at Memphis and some other places. But why did nobody else want anybody else on the staff, Richie?
They wanted Surtain. I think Georgia wanted Surtain.
Yeah, but I don't think they really were going to make a run. After 1 year, that was not one that necessarily worried me a ton.
Yeah.
And you'd have paid to keep him.
Oh, yeah.
I think
you better.
when people are, I think that's kind of telling too. How can you get rid of a 13-0 staff? Well, nobody else wanted them. Also, too, when we went 13-0 in 2013, how many guys were off of that staff? You know what I'm saying? They came and got Pruitt. They came in, there were, I'm sorry. Yeah. That staff got poached. And so, I don't know, frustrating, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do? I think you also, people talk about Dugans a lot. When the Dugans thing happened, Richie, I don't know how public this was. I think it was public, but if not, then here you guys go. Here's a little nugget. They put him on a 1-year contract. Most coaches are on a 2-year rolling contract, and you'll notice every coach on staff that got upgraded, it was at least through 2026. They put Dugans on a 1-year contract when they were kind of shopping around looking for a replacement for him. And that's pretty unheard of. I've spoken with people in the more, that is not something they normally do. And it was kind of a, hey, dog, you got to get your stuff together and get rolling. And to Dugans' credit, he absolutely did. But for everybody else to just very bluntly just get a 2-year contract and there be no real consideration for that is a little bit interesting to me. And when that's what they did to Dugans a few years ago, is they put him on a 1 year and then he obviously turned it around and cleaned it up. So I also think that at the end of the day, you do have to, I think there's a fair amount of trusting Norvell that comes into it, and a decent amount of worrying what the future looks like at certain positions. I am not worried about the future at quarterback. I am not worried about the future at running back. You've brought in 6 blue chip wide receivers over the last 2 cycles.
Shout out Ron, man.
7.
Let's go.
7 with Destin Hill. So I'm not worried about wide receiver. I'm not worried about tight end, really. I'm not worried about offensive line. You've brought in several blue chips there. I'm not worried about secondary. I think you brought in 8 or 9 blue chips there over the last 2 years. I understand that the defensive line was good this year. I understand that the linebacking core was good this year. I don't know that you're bringing in enough blue chip talent in those 2 rooms for the future. Those position groups may be fine this year. I think Darrell Jackson, Pat Payton, Josh Farmer, Marvin Jones Jr., there are some good pieces on that defensive line. They got another defensive line transfer that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But I don't know that the depth is good enough. I worry about the linebacker room this year, but you certainly don't have a lot for the future at those 2 positions. So that worries me. And so that's somewhere in the middle, right? You don't have to be Norvell's lost it, and you also don't have to be Norvell's the greatest thing ever, Saban and Bobby combined, and never doubt him again type thing. It can be somewhere in the middle, Richie.
Yeah, and there's always back channel conversations. So I think if Norvell thought that he had someone who he knew was an absolute upgrade from, Shannon or Papuchis to bring in, he would do it. He would make that change. I do think Norvell does have that killer instinct. I don't think it's going to be like Jimbo was, how he just held on to, a guy like Rick Trickett, who, a lot of the fan base liked, but clearly recruits had no interest in playing for him for the most part. So I do think Norvell has that killer instinct. I think he just saw what happened this season. Said, listen, we had a lot of adversity. We still went 13-0. The Orange Bowl didn't matter, whatever. And let's run it back with this same group of people and see what happens next year. And if Florida State goes 10-2, 11-1, and wins the ACC next year, and then signs another top 10 recruiting class, but improves at defensive end and linebacker, well, that's a gamble that paid off at that point. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, we're just, some fans here on the outside looking in. We want the absolute most for this program, but so does Mike Norvell. And he's not going to, make decisions based on who he's friends with or who he's not. I truly do believe in that. I think the only thing I disagree with is signing these extensions before signing day. I think you should have waited till afterwards. Make these coaches earn it. But maybe in his mind, he thought, hey, 13-0, they earned it. So this is where we are right now.
Yeah. Super chat here from Jeff says, to be fair with this staff, the first 3 years we were losing seasons. It was garbage, and we just recently won 10 games last year, and this year went undefeated. Yeah, I think that makes his job a lot tougher. Certainly wasn't going to fire anyone, and I don't think, I don't know that I ever called for anyone to get fired. But again, could you upgrade at certain positions? He shows the ability and the willingness to do that on the field, right? He's recruited guys that were lower ranked prospects. And Jeff, I appreciate the love there in the super chat. He's recruited guys that were lower level. And if those guys didn't necessarily cut it, he has gone out in the transfer portal or in the next year's recruiting class and kind of recruited over them. So, he does do, that concept is not foreign to Mike Norvell. He understands that. The other thing I want to say, and then we'll move off of this, guys, and I do think that this conversation is helpful because it's not just all one side or the other. We're not saying that Mike Norvell is a bad coach if he doesn't fire somebody right now. And we're also not saying like Mike Norvell is an infallible human that can never make mistakes. The truth is somewhere in the middle.
He's still learning. Yeah.
I hate the narrative that Florida State is, I saw it in just a dumb fan article the other day, but that Florida State is somehow hoping and focusing on the transfer portal at certain positions, and D-line being one of them. And that is a absolute false narrative that, as much as I like Mike Norvell, is literally just made up to try and make Norvell kind of look a little bit better. Florida State is investing an absolute ton into defensive line recruiting. They are, from time, from money, from resources, all of those things, they are not just focusing on the portal for defensive line recruiting. They are absolutely trying to land the best of the best. And very often, they're coming in second and third. And so you can't, if you just look at who they're recruiting, you can see what they're prioritizing. They are prioritizing guys like Armando Blunt. They are prioritizing guys like LJ McCray. They are prioritizing guys like Wesley Basaint and Ruben Bain and Marvin Jones Jr. and Tyree West and Keldrick Falk. They're trying to get them. If they just weren't trying to get defensive linemen at the high school level, then I could say, yeah, I'd agree. They're focusing on the portal. But that's not what their actions are telling you. They are trying to get guys at the high school level. They just haven't been super successful doing so. And they finished as a bridesmaid for, I believe, every kid that I just mentioned, they finished second for. And so you can't tell me that Mike just is ignoring high school recruiting and using the portal instead. Now, I think it's very fair to say he is using the portal to make up for recruiting misses, and he has done that phenomenally. What they've done with Jared Verse, Kier Thomas, Jermaine Johnson, Marvin Jones Jr., Gilbert Edmond to an extent,
Fabo,
Daryl Jackson, they've done a phenomenal job in the portal at making up for recruiting misses. And if they can continue to do that, then more power to them. Hats off, let's roll. But the idea that they're just not focusing on high school recruiting is at the defensive line position is a total fallacy. They are trying hard. They're just unfortunately not landing. And I want them to land these guys. I want LJ McCray. I want Armando Blunt. I want Keldrick Falk. I want Marvin Jones Jr. the first time. but they're not just not doing it. Unfortunately, they're just failing at it. And then they've got a good plan B. They've done a good job in the portal. So don't let anybody lie to you and tell you that Mike Norvell doesn't care about high school recruiting when it comes to defensive line or any other position. He absolutely does. They are trying to land guys there. Unfortunately, just not somewhere where they've been super successful. So, Richie, anything else on that, and then we'll move on.
No, overall, again, this is a staff that went 13-0 this season. The Orange Bowl, I said before the game it didn't matter, and I clearly afterwards still don't believe it did. You have a very good staff, but do you want to be very good or do you want to be elite? And that's the decision Mike Norvell has to make. And I think he will make the right decision for this program, for the future of this program, because I think Mike Norvell, he's not content going 13-1 with an ACC championship. He wants to be, Mike Norvell's the type of head coach, he wants to be in the playoff every single year, especially now that we have 12 teams every year. That's going to, next year, Florida State in the preseason projections are probably going to be in the outside looking in. Mike Norvell's going to say, no, that ain't good enough. That's not flying with me. We are going to the freaking playoff. And that's his mentality. And I love that.
Hey, this is a really good question. William, even though you didn't super chat it, I'm going to answer it. What makes high school recruiting so hard? First of all, the level of competition. Everybody else is, it's just sales, right? Like you're just trying to get, everybody's fighting for the same kids, and there's a limited number of kids. However, I heard Bud say this, and so I'll give him the credit. Relationships, energy, effort are the big three things in recruiting. Energy, effort, and relationships. So if you're, and I'm not saying that any of our coaches are any of these, if you're low energy, if you're low effort, lazy, not very good, and not good at building relationships, any of those things will kind of have you struggling, right? And so that's all it is. If you've ever worked a sales job, if you have ever been in sales, can certainly be tough to sell a product, a service, your program, if you don't make an effort, if you don't have high energy, and if you're not good at building relationships. I see a lot of people saying money.
That's not the issue.
Florida State has a top 10 NIL in the country. They're not losing kids because of money. I'm just telling you. William, thank you for the love. They're not losing kids because of money. I'm just that's less of the issue here. They're not signing 12 blue chip kids and then missing out on all their D-line targets because they won't, it's not like the battle's end is paying all the wide receivers and defensive backs and running backs and quarterbacks and just refuses to pay defensive tackles. It ain't a money problem on the defensive line or at linebacker. It is there are other issues there that we can kind of go into later. All right, Shane, we'll move on after this. But yeah, it's not, you don't win every battle outside of the defensive line and say like, oh, well, the money's good there, but we just can't pay defensive linemen. That's just not truthfully how it works. To be honest, we may just need some city miles as a program. Come up with enough big seasons like Bowden did in the late 70s and through the 80s. I don't know. I appreciate the love, Shane. If you can't sell a 13-0 program that lost to Jacksonville State 2 years ago as like a turnaround, then I don't know. It seems to me the big thing is like people are like, oh, well, this, that, the other. Well, it's not a struggle for Dugans to do it. It's not a struggle for Yak to do it. It's not a struggle for Tokars to do it or for Pat Surtain to do it. So, like, they're all selling the same thing. Pat Surtain's selling the same program.
Georgia would have loved to have Cam Davis, would have loved to have Luke Kermahawk and several others. So, to your point, DJ, we there's something to sell here, and it's not that hard to sell. But for some reason, at some positions, it is.
Yeah. Ron Dugans has the same NIL budget. I don't know about same budget, per position, but Ron Dugans is using the same NIL collective that Odell and Randy and JP and Surtain are, right? Like they're all, so don't tell me it's money when we're landing guys at some positions, and don't tell me it's the program that you're selling and you need to win more when we're winning at some positions, but not at others. We're not doing a Cat Williams interview out there, but I did laugh at that, DJ. All right, let's move on. Hey, garnetandgold.com, they had a white hoodie that sold out like in hours. So hopefully you guys are following them on Twitter. They had a fire white hoodie that sold out faster than I could even get one. But if you shop at Garnet and Gold online, which you should, use the code NOSLAW, NOSLAW, to get 15% off at garnetandgold.com. Richie, you talked a little bit about next season. We'll get into some transfer stuff here in a little bit. But speaking of next season, too early for this already? Actually, I think we're backwards. Are we supposed to do the playoff and then go to this?
Either way.
Let's do this. Okay, McElroy didn't ask me anything on,
Oh my
Reddit the other
goodness.
day, and changed his tune a little bit to say that FSU was robbed, and then went on to justify it and say that it's an imperfect process and blah 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 blah, and there were 5 deserving teams and blah 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 blah, just a bunch of BS. I don't know if you saw the follow-up to that. People had scrolled back and saw Fowler's Ask Me Anything, where he basically said, like, I've always been, this was from years ago, I've always been a big fan of resume, not necessarily, like the wins matter, right? Like it's more than just So anyway, thoughts on ESPN somewhat changing their tune, but certainly not completely trying to still justify what's being said here.
No, it's a joke. It all is. McElroy, literally the Wednesday before the selection Sunday, he came out and said Florida State absolutely belongs in. He tweeted it, said it would be a travesty if Florida State won and did not get in. And then the morning before the selection show, he's like, no, it's got to be Alabama and Texas. That's just what it has to be. And it was clear, I guess the frustrating part for me is it's obvious that, whether it be all the way up to Kirk Herbstreit, the voice of college football, or, a mid-level guy like a Greg McElroy, that they are not telling their genuine thoughts. They clearly have marching orders. They're told what to say, and that's what they say. And it sucks because, I grew up loving College Game Day, and I just can't look at the show the same anymore. Whether it be Kirk, Lee is the only reason I will tune in to watch College Game Day moving forward. Lovely course. So obviously this hopefully should be his last year, man. They need to quit trotting that man out there. But yeah, like McElroy, he clearly says whatever his bosses tell him to say. Like that's obvious. And I'm sure ESPN is like, hey, we need to get Florida State fans back on our side a little bit. And this is not a conspiracy theory, guys. Just look at the timeline of events, what was been said and what is being said now. It's obvious, and that McElroy's the first pawn to say, hey, we need you to go and get these Florida State fans back on our side. There's no other way to read it. It's just not. And I'm not crazy here. This is exactly what it is. And, it sucks for a guy like McElroy, who I think is very talented, but clearly is not allowed to give his own opinions. He's told what to say, how to say it, when to say it. And that sucks for him that his job holds him to that so closely that they say, no, Greg, I know you think this, but we need you to say this. That's clearly what's going on with Greg McElroy, and it's a shame. And, you lose a lot of respect for the guy, but he's getting a paycheck to pay for his mortgage, so I can't really get that mad at the guy.
Yeah, no, I don't care. Screw him. It doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't, I think anytime you're kind of like, I don't know, it's just so obvious, right? Like, you could say all these things about, where's he been the last month? Saying like, oh, I just can't, Florida State got screwed. And, he said like, oh, well, I was saying that, because I thought that they would take the easy path, and what they really needed to do with it was this, as much crap as Pate gets. Like he even said this, like the reality is this: they probably had those meetings and they probably said, listen, what happened with TCU last year was a nightmare. Don't ever let that happen on our airwaves again. And do I think that Florida State at full strength, minus Travis, would have gotten blown out like that in any of those playoff games? No. Does the possibility exist? I mean, I guess. No. And so if you're ESPN...
We watched those semifinals, TJ. We saw those.
And we'll get to that in a minute. But I think if you're ESPN and that's in your mind, you're thinking like, no, we can't let that ever happen again. Like we can. And so like, I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but like you can totally see their logic. Like, yeah, we can't have another 60-point loss, though we gave them that in a playoff game.
Be transparent though. That's all we wanted.
Like, just say, I mean, the fact that the committee we've rehashed all this. We don't have to go into it all again, but McElroy coming out and trying to, oh, well, we, this, that, and the other, like just so full of crap, on just the idea that like, oh, I'm just so heartbroken for everybody coming out saying we're so heartbroken for the kids. They were saying it that morning, like we got it, anybody but Florida State. And so, again, we've rehashed all that. It was just, his Ask Me Anything was fans from every team, not just FSU fans. That's what was cool is like you see like Ohio State little avatars and stuff. And I'm not huge on Reddit. Shout out to anybody on here that shares our stuff on Reddit. We appreciate you. But we hit a milestone. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it was cool. I logged in and I'm like checking it all out, and they were fans of Ohio State asking like, so 3 days before you said this, and then the morning of you said this, like, what changed your mind there? And
it reminded me, TJ. Do you remember when Florida State Twitter 2014 FSU Media Days did the hashtag Ask Jameis questions?
Yeah,
and it did not turn out well at all. And that's what I thought when I saw McElroy. I'm like, oh boy. But I was excited about this one. I'm like, this is going to be fun. I didn't even participate, but I knew it was going to be a bad day for McElroy, ESPN, and their execs. And great, I loved it.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. James' birthday was yesterday. We'll transition out of this. James' birthday was yesterday, and I just posted like happy birthday, GOAT, right? So, which was great. I got so many comments saying like, I bet he's eating crab legs for dinner. Like that was like a gotcha. And I'm like, that sounds delicious. Like I bet he is. Like I mean, like
I would love crab legs.
Yeah, I mean, this is not you're not getting the troll you think you're getting, because I kind of like, I got that comment so many times in my mentions that I was like, dang, I really want some seafood now. Like that really sounds like, who wouldn't want crab legs? So anyway, yeah, like that's not really the gotcha moment.
It's a lemon butter. Absolutely.
Yeah. People thinking I like the Cajun, but yeah, I want so much Cajun seasoning that I got heartburn after. I need like 17 Tums afterwards. So, all right, you talked about the playoff games. Let's talk about this really quickly. We'll talk about the national team when we move on to the portal. Bama and Michigan, some late scoring there that made that game look a little more high scoring than it truly was. But not necessarily an insane game, a crazy game by any means. Certainly something that I think Florida State could have competed in. When you look at the way that both teams played, I think Michigan had like 13 points or something like that, like until their last drive. I mean, so Florida State could have had a one touchdown in it. They would have been in the game in the fourth quarter. And again, I know it wasn't. People didn't want to see Florida State in there. That's fine. But Michigan, Bama, I didn't come away from that game thinking that we couldn't compete at all. I was, as much as Michigan cheated this year, if I got any Michigan fans in here that I offended, then, whatever, you guys cheated twice and you should be used to it by now. But I was glad that Michigan won. Felt like a little bit of indication that Alabama lost. I know that maybe goes a little bit different in your house. I know that you were a temporary Alabama fan for a minute, not to call you out, but
I got cooked for that.
Yeah, but I was glad. It would have been, not that the playoff or the bowl game against Georgia, anything like really vindicated or would have proven anything, but I was glad that Michigan ended up winning. And then later I was glad Washington ended up winning too.
It was awesome that both Alabama and Texas, the two one-loss teams that got in ahead of Florida State, lost. And, obviously overtime it is a close game, but Michigan played terrible, man. They really did. And they were literally a potential muffed punt away from giving Alabama the win. Sure. And they played poorly the entire game. It wasn't that Alabama did anything. Milroe was terrible. Brock Glenn threw for more yards against Georgia than Milroe did against Michigan. It's just, it made it even more frustrating, but also validated my thoughts as well, that there's no reason that Michigan or that Alabama and Texas should have got in the playoff over Florida State. It was a joke. Michigan, I thought, dominated 3 of the 4 quarters. I'll give Alabama the third quarter. And then clock management in that Washington Texas game was just crazy. But if you watch the game, that's another game. Washington just kind of dominated Texas. So I'm glad that we have Michigan and Washington, because I do think they're the 2 best teams in the country right now, with Jordan Travis being injured. And I think we're going to have a phenomenal national championship game on Monday night. But the fact that both, I think, to my opinion, Michigan and Texas and Alabama both were kind of dominated most of their games. Florida State should have had that chance. They deserved it, and it just made me that much more angry, TJ.
The idea that Florida State was held out due to poor QB play by Tate and Brock, and then
for Quinn Ewers and Milroe. Give me a
you
break.
lined up Monroe, who is a Wildcat running back, and let him be the quarterback against a really good Michigan defense, and he couldn't do anything. Was pretty laughable, and completely like kind of spit in the committee's face. And a lot of people saying, "Well, Florida State could have done this." I saw a lot of Florida State haters saying that. So yeah, that late game, I thought Washington did dominate. They had a muff punt in that game too. They had another. I think they threw a pick at the goal line or something. Like I thought there was at one point where they should have been up like 21-7. And I tweeted that it was 14-14, I think. And I was thinking, man, they should have been up 21-7. And then they scored on the next play. So it really would have been like 28-7. That game would have been done. That game would have been dusted. That clock management at the end was terrible. Do you have a preference in the national championship? Do you care who wins it? I certainly do. But what are your thoughts there?
Go blue. I want Michigan to win because of the cheating scandal and everything that has happened with Harbaugh. I just love the idea of the villain. It would have been like Florida State had won the national title in 2014 to go back to back. Give me the double middle fingers. Like, yeah, we cheated. Yeah, we did it. We got caught and none of you could stop us. We did it anyway. And I just don't respect little programs like Washington. I want to go to Washington to go sailgating for a game. That'd be awesome. But no, give me the Wolverines. Go blue. I'm gonna grab my I'm gonna get me a Tom Brady Michigan jersey for the game Monday night and post a picture and get roasted again.
I got a bold prediction. If Richie ever goes sailgating at Washington, he will not make it off the boat into the game. That is my.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
It's a safe prediction. I feel like. Yeah, no, I want Washington to win. I like Penix. I'm not a big fan of the cheating stuff. Like I was
Shout out
going to cheer for
Tampa.
Michigan. Yeah, I was going to cheer for Michigan if it was against Texas because I didn't want a 3 or 4 to win. I wanted the 1 or 2 so that I can craft the narrative that I need for Twitter. But I certainly I like Penix. But yeah, I got stuff for this either way. So
no, I need to get me a Connor Stallion. Like I'm gonna wear the outfit like with the glasses with the camera in it, and I'm gonna be watching the game that way Monday night.
No, I'm with it. So, Leon, TJ's got the TBE quarter zip on. Yeah, we're gonna talk about this portal here in just a minute, and then we'll get to it. Richie, I don't know if you saw this. Excuse me. FanDuel came out with their odds for the 2025 national championship, the one that'll follow the 24 season. And there's a lot of talk about what Florida State will be, what they won't be. I literally just got a tweet at me while we were on the show that we won't win 8 games with DJ Uiagalelei, who we haven't talked about on this show, but we will right after this. Who and what the Noles will be this year. But FanDuel has Florida State with the 8th best odds to win the national championship, meaning in FanDuel's eyes, Florida State is in the playoff next year as a 12-team playoff, or at least likely to make the playoff. Obviously, if they win the ACC, they can do that. It's really early, Richie. It is January. We've got a lot of months to go until we're throwing back Guinnesses over in Ireland. But does that seem high to you? Does that seem low to you? What are your thoughts on that? At Florida State coming in like 8th. The usual suspects ahead of Florida State. I'll run down them real quick. No other rivals. No one else in the ACC. Obviously, Georgia, Alabama, your top 2 in that. Right behind it, Ohio State, Texas, Michigan, Oregon, LSU. They don't learn their lesson putting LSU ahead of us, Richie. But anyway, yeah, we got Florida State at 8th, and then those other teams that we mentioned, 1 through 7. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we're probably a little high right now because, going back to our first segment, I think we still have a lot of question marks at linebacker. Defensemen, I think, will be okay this year, so not so much there. I like what we have. I like the roster. Top 15, I'm all on board with. Top 8, that might be a stretch for me, but maybe they know something that we don't know that's coming up in the portal here soon. I think Florida State is going to be just fine. I think, going out to Ireland, I'm extremely excited. I think I saw one line that had Florida State 4.5 against Georgia Tech. I would bet a lot of money on that if I could get it.
Before you leave the States, because your Hard Rock app isn't going to work over there.
Yeah.
So before you leave the States.
Oh, shout out the Hard Rock app. I did catch in. I took the Bucks 4.5 today, and
Good job.
it was ugly, but they got it done. But yeah, it's the teams you would expect ahead of us. And, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Texas. I think Texas is going to fall off. I really do. Michigan might as well, and even Oregon without Bo Nix. And LSU, you just can't trust them. Like, who ahead of us outside of Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State do you say absolutely 100% they're going to be better than us next year? Nobody, in my opinion. I'm not saying we have the fourth best odds, because I don't think we do. I think we still have some things to figure out. But I'm excited heading into the season, because I do think 2024 Florida State is a college football playoff contender, being a 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I think so too. When you look at the AC, I mean, I'll tell you, as much as we hate this conference, I'll tell you this with as much as you're losing to graduation and eligibility in the NFL, this is a good year to be in the ACC. There's no such thing as a good year to be in the ACC. This is a not as bad year to be in the ACC.
Yeah.
When you look at Florida State's schedule, I think the schedule sets up fairly nicely. You look at teams that you should beat. You should beat because you're Florida State and you're just more talented. Now that you have DJU, which we'll talk about in just a moment, you should beat. I'll run down the schedule. You should beat Georgia Tech. You should beat Memphis. You should beat Charleston Southern. You should beat Duke. That's 4 wins. You should beat Boston College. That's 5 wins. You should beat Cal. That's 6 wins. You should beat SMU. That's 7 wins. You should beat North Carolina at home. I don't think they're returning quite as good of a team as they were last year. That's 8 wins. To me, any one of those losses, not that you can't lose to any one of those teams, you should not lose to any of those 8 games. And that's just, this is January. This is early. We're not doing a schedule preview. But this is Florida State, and you're not losing any of those 8 games. And if you do, it's a problem to me. And then you got basically you win those 8, and you got a 4-game season. You got Miami, Florida, Clemson, and Notre Dame.
And you're better than all of them.
Yeah, you're more talented.
Notre Dame's the one team that would be the toughest, in my opinion, because I think Marcus Freeman, I think he's got something serious going on in South Bend.
You go 10-2, and as long as your 2 losses aren't in the ACC, you go 10-2. Right?
Yeah.
Let's say you lose to Clemson or Miami, so you got 1 ACC loss, and then you split with Florida and Notre Dame, right? However, right? So you go 2-2 in that. And if you're 2-2, you're going to Charlotte because you only have 1 ACC loss.
Win that, you're in the playoff.
And you win that, you're in. So now, could Florida State go 8-4 this year? Absolutely. Could they? To me, the floor is like 7-5, 8-4, somewhere in there. The ceiling to me is like 10-2, 11-1.
12-0. If we're talking ceilings.
Yeah, tough for me to predict 12-0 this or.
Well, not going to predict it. No. I'm not predicting it, so I don't want to get clips here. But the ceiling, they could definitely go. There's no auto losses on the schedule next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Notre Dame games, Notre Dame or Clemson at home, Notre Dame on the road, Clemson at home, probably your toughest 2. I think Miami's going to be tough. Their trenches are really good, but if they don't find a quarterback, then you probably find a way to win that too. Just kind of keep
striking out in the portal.
If they don't find one. And I'm good with Baby Tua going there because I don't think he's very good. So but yeah, I think, you need to go 10-2. To me, this is a 10-2 type schedule. You need to win 8 of your games, and then you need to go 2-2 in the other 2. And if you can do a little bit better, if you can go 3-1 or you can 4-0, then great. That it's hard to go back-to-back undefeated seasons. You saw how hard that was for Jameis his second year too. It's very difficult to do that, and so nobody's going to give this team any slack if they go 10-2. Honestly, if they go 9-3, I'm not jumping off the skyway or anything like that either. But you go 10-2 and you go to Charlotte, you're playing for the playoff, right? They can't screw you out of it. They can't keep you out because of anything else. You're playing for the playoff at that point. And it might be a rematch with Clemson like we thought we were going to get this year. It might be NC State, who I think is going to be really good and has a really easy ACC schedule too. But you go to 10-2, you get to Charlotte, you're playing for the playoff. And when you look at that, when you look at other teams, why I think Florida State's so highly ranked in this conversation, these FanDuel odds, I think they have one of the easiest paths to get to the playoff. Because like I just said, their schedule's not incredibly tough. They are more talented than 8 or 9 of the teams that they play. So they're going to be a favorite 9 or 10 times that they play this year. And so when you consider all of that, and you consider all they got to do is go 10-2, get to Charlotte, they're in. In theory, you can go 9-3, get to Charlotte, win, and you're in, as long as you can get to Charlotte with that record. But I think the Noles have a really good chance to do it. And I think 8th is about right when you consider that. I don't know that I would say the Noles are the 8th best team in the country. I don't know that I would go that far. No. But I do think when you kind of consider what it will take to get to the playoff, the Noles could get there a little easier than most places. So,
And
or
TJ,
than most.
it is a shame, an absolute shame that Will Shipley has declared for the NFL draft.
Oh
Thank
man, best news of
goodness.
the year. No, I don't believe we'll be okay. So tell me if I'm wrong on this. Aren't there auto bids? Like, aren't
I
the
think
conference
there's
champions?
the five Power Fives leagues, which is weird because the Pac-12 still get one, and then the highest group of five, and then six at-large bids is what I believe it is. But I don't know what they're going to do with the Pac-12. Like, is it one of the two teams that's left? If they go like 7-5, do they just get in just because?
I
But I'm pretty sure every conference champ gets in next year.
Yeah, they do. But do they get a specific spot, or are they just in and then they seed them?
I don't know. I think
The conference
they're
champions
in and then
rise, or
they
how's that
seed
work?
them. It would make more sense to put them in and then seed them from there. Like it'd be ridiculous if like a 6-6 Cal team got in as the 5 seed. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
It'd be
College football is
ridiculous.
just
Not quite
ridiculous.
as ridiculous as leaving out an undefeated
Yeah,
Power Five champ,
yeah.
but still ridiculous nonetheless. All right. 600 people watching this live. Do us a favor. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. It does help a ton. We recently just went over 15,000 subscribers. So thank you
Saw that.
to
Awesome.
the most of you out there who are subscribed. It means a lot. I'll tell you, last July, so July of 20, no, I'm sorry, 2 Julys ago. So it's been about 2.5 years. July of 2020, July of 2022, we had about 500 YouTube subscribers. And so, since then, about a year and a half, we have grown by, almost 15,000, which is incredible. And we really appreciate you guys for all the support and love. If you are already supporting us, you should be supporting the Battle's End as well. We're going to talk about some of these transfers. Richie, I'll let you start. But as we tell you all the time, make sure you're supporting the Battle's End. If you're an FSU football fan and you're on here watching me and Richie, go on about things that truly just don't matter that much. I mean, as much as I love the Noles, this isn't the end of the world if, we win or lose a football game. It is the end of the world if the committee snubs us. But make sure you're supporting the Battle's End. You can go to thebattlesend.com. Sign up today at any level. You can also do a one-time donation if a monthly subscription does not fit into the budget. But the way I look at it is I get a lot of entertainment out of Florida State football. I get a lot of enjoyment. I get a lot of just whatever, man. Like, it's a big part of my life. If I can give back and I can help kind of move that ship forward in my own little way, then I am proud to do so. I know Richie does as well. I know Harlan does as well. And I won't speak for them, but I assume they kind of feel the same way. I get a lot of enjoyment out of watching those kids play 12, 13, 14 Saturdays a year. And if I can help out in any little way, if we can all kind of come together and help out in any little way, it certainly does help the program for sure. So, Richie, DJ Uiagalelei committed the day after we got off of here, so we didn't get to talk about it, but he commits to the Noles. Is QB1 assumed? Can't imagine Brock beats him out, but best of luck in that competition. DJ Uiagalelei, quarterback 1 next year, it seems. What are your thoughts there?
I love it. And, to your point, TJ, I don't think Brock saw this and decided to say, all right, well, I guess it's next year for me. I think Brock is ready to compete for the job, and I think he will. I think DJ, ultimately wins the job, but I think he's a guy, man, for a team that struggled so much in, third and short and fourth and short situations. Mike Norvell's got to be like, all right, give me this guy, the 6'5", 250. He is a massive human being. And I love that he kind of waited. Like, it seemed, I think Florida State was the only visit he took. And, he kind of waited. Obviously, Cam Ward was probably Florida State's preference, if we're being honest. And he ended up, going to the NFL draft. And I think it was a situation where not only did you think Cam Ward had a higher ceiling, but also you wanted to keep him away from Miami, who you have to play in as your biggest rival. So him going to the NFL and us getting DJ Uiagalelei is the best case scenario, in my opinion, because now Miami's scrambling. Like, they're looking at FCS quarterbacks. Like, this is crazy. I think this is the best case scenario for Florida State. I think DJ, he was the last quarterback to beat Florida State in the regular season in the past 2 years. Florida State went on to win 19 games since then. So DJ knows how to play a great game in Doak. His dad is awesome. Give him a follow on Twitter. He's kind of like the Rob DeLoach of this year's team coming up. But yeah, I'm very excited. I think he's got a massive arm. He's going to have some opportunities. I think Jordan's probably the better player of the two, but with Mike and Tony, I think they can really mold him into a very good college quarterback.
Yeah, I think, when you look at the play that he had at Clemson, a lot of Florida State fans were pretty down on this at one point. But then you look at the way that he played at Oregon State. You also look how Clemson's next quarterback has played in Cade Klubnik. And you might kind of say, like, well, maybe it's Clemson, not me, hey, it's you, not me, right? And you look at what Mike's done with quarterbacks at Memphis and here, obviously, with Jordan Travis as well. We kind of like the idea of him being able to get a little bit more out of DJU. It's astonishing to me that when you look at QBR, which is not the end-all be-all, Richie, but we talked about this, DJ had a slightly better QBR than Jordan Travis, who I think didn't play as well this year as he did the year prior. Offense wasn't as good this year as it was the year prior. I don't think that's shocking to anybody. But when you look at that, I think that he obviously has the capability of being really, really good for the Noles. And, to me, I think your ceiling with Brock was probably around that 7-8 mark. Some of those auto wins that I talked about, what need to be auto wins this year probably are not auto wins. But when you add DJ, that ceiling rises by a couple of games, maybe like Richie said, even 4 games to get it up to that 12 level. So yeah, I think you've got the chance to be in every game that you play. I think right now my win total right now for the Noles is 9 or 10 wins with DJ. I need to see them add some more in the portal. I need to do a little bit more, but I like the pickup. Cam Ward was everybody's number one pick. I mean, the guy is going to the NFL. Like, if you can add NFL, I don't think that's a shot at DJ. I think that's, hey, dog, we got a chance to get this guy who's going to the NFL. We're going to try and get this guy that's going to the NFL, like, what do you mean? Like, of course you're going to try that. But I think DJ was patient. DJ wanted to be a Seminole. I'm not one of these guys like, oh, just give me the guy that wants to be a Nole over anybody. Hey, if Cam Ward was there, I was more than happy to get Cam Ward. But I think there is some value to DJ. Really waited around, really wanted this, didn't entertain other offers.
It shows his maturity, in my opinion.
It does, man. He knows what, and I think he's got a lot of faith. And as much as we give Norvell a hard time for coaching decisions or whatever, the fact that DJ was like, no, I got to be developed by Norvell. I want to go play at the next level. I got to come here. Like that mindset, man, that's huge, and that is massive. And so I am really looking forward to DJ Uiagalelei playing for Florida State. I'll say this, and I think it's going to go very well. Like I just said, I think we win 9-10 games, maybe more. We'll see. Next year in the regular season, I think he beats both rivals. So like I think we're in really good hands there, really good shape there. So, worst case scenario, Richie, you don't hit your ceiling. You win 8 games and you move on, right? You got the young guys. You got Luke. You got Brock. It's a 1-year thing. No big deal. You move on and you go. So I like the DJ pickup a lot.
Yeah, let me read this. His dad tweeted today, DJ has finally arrived in Tallahassee, Florida. He hit the ground running, going straight to workouts and training with his teammates at Florida State. He is entering next season with the utmost confidence. DJ is no stranger to hard work. He is always the first one to practice and the last one to leave, just like he was at Oregon State. He will be a sponge and do everything necessary to prepare for next season. Nothing is promised. Everything is earned. That's DJ's mentality. And what he values is this opportunity. DJ does not take this opportunity lightly, and he is fully prepared to fight for the starting position and earn it. Go Noles. I love that.
I love it. I love the mindset. Again, I love the kid didn't entertain other offers, wanted to be part of Florida State, and I'm excited to see what we can do this year. I think we'll talk way more about his game as time goes along, but I'm really excited for him. Past that, 4 portal additions. Man, I was hoping that last one would come in like an hour before so that we could have like 4 in 48 hours, in 24 hours. Ended up just being a little over that. About 25 hours, though, Florida State has added 4 guys in the portal. Let me talk about them all really quickly, Richie, and then wrap up and get out of here.
Rapid fire.
Oh yeah, we can also talk about some other targets and stuff, and then go on like other positions of need. Jaylen Brown, who you recruited very, very heavily. There was a time, Richie, like last September, that I thought, maybe like August. Sorry, let's back up a little bit. Last August, I thought Florida State was going to get Hakeem Williams and Jaylen Brown. Like, I thought they were going to get both those guys in the 2023 signing class. Jaylen Brown went to LSU. You did land Hakeem Williams, but now a little over a year later, you have both of them in your class. Jaylen Brown, supremely talented kid. He was a top 100 kid coming out of high school. A little bit outside of that now with the portal ranking. Well, no, I'm still in it, but there's obviously less guys in the portal. Not as highly sought after because you lose a year of him playing. But like, I'm excited for Jaylen Brown. I think it's a big pickup. You lost Goldie Lawrence, who I actually liked a ton out of Central Florida, but you land a much more talented prospect in Jaylen Brown. No shot to Goldie. Hope he lands well. But I really, really like Jaylen Brown. I think that's a big pickup for the Noles. Wide receiver room. I said this on the video that I did when I put it out. I am past the point of ever worrying about our wide receiver room at Florida State, Richie.
Yeah, and Goldie, huge fan of him and wish him nothing but the best. Sucks that he's leaving the program, but it is what it is. And Jaylen Brown, he's the guy that everybody in the country wanted. Everybody. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, USC, Florida State, Miami, and now Florida State has him. And that's the great thing about the portal, and also the crappy thing about the portal, because you could lose a guy like that quickly. No, he's going to be great at Florida State. I love our wide receiver room. I truly think we have the best wide receiver room in the state. They just got to go out and prove it next year. They just have to go out and prove it next year. And if they do the way I think they will, they're all going to earn. I don't want tomahawks. I want shamrocks on all their helmets next year to open the season.
Yeah. So like that pickup a lot. Earl Little, a defensive back out of Alabama. He was in the class before, so the 2022 signing class. I think that's a really good pickup too. You obviously lose a couple of cornerbacks in. Excuse me. I'm doing two. So yeah, shout out the battles in. I always shout out the battles in when we do commitments, but yeah, the quarter zip is on tonight. 2 commits today. So we did. I'm burping a little bit because we did 2 beers. So these are the only 2 beers I had cold. So we're doing an IPA and an Oktoberfest in January, which is really. My wife made chili this week, and Oktoberfest, the spices in it, Richie, like actually really goes well with chili. So let me just tell you that, like, that wasn't a bad pairing. But I'm trying to save some of it.
Chili's my specialty. I would. Kara is a lovely woman. I would put her chili to shame.
I don't know about that. We got to get together soon, and you guys can both cook it while it's still cold outside, and then we'll do it. Me and Lindsay will be the testers. We'll do it blind. We
got sidetracked a little bit. That's okay.
Yeah, but I love chili. Shout out chili. Earl Little, big time pickup. You lost Jarian Jones. You lost Renardo Green. Due to eligibility during the NFL draft. And so you do need some more depth there. I like Azariah Thomas. I really like that you're getting Fintrell Cypress back there. You probably didn't get as much as you wanted there, but I do like bringing in Earl Little, a guy that's been developed under Saban for 2 years. His dad is tweeting a little bit about, hey, it wasn't injuries. It wasn't anything else. You're about to see what this player can be. Taking guys from Bama that couldn't see the field, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You saw kind of what UGA's backups could do.
Jermaine Johnson,
there's some quality there. And so I really like the Earl Little pickup as well. I don't know if you have thoughts on that or not. I can run through the last couple too as well, but just wanted to kind of give you a chance on Little if you wanted.
Yeah, I'll let you run through the last 2, but big fan of the Earl Little. Again, another player that Florida State was in the thick of it out of high school. And it goes to show it, as frustrating as it could be, I would not want to be a college football head coach right now because it's got to be maddening. But this is a player that seriously considered Florida State, very elite talent. And with Pat Surtain, I love what could be here. I truly do. I think he can be an outstanding player for Florida State. And I cannot wait to see what happens. Actually, I'm not worried about our secondary, TJ, at all. And Earl Little just confirms that even more.
Yeah, I mean, we have we spend a long time like doting and complaining about certain position groups. There are far more position groups on this offense and defense that we don't. Well, on this team in general that we don't worry. I don't worry about wide receiver. I don't worry about DB. I don't worry about running back in a Mike Norvell offense ever. Quarterback as well, and so I think that there's a lot of pros, positives, if I could spit the word out, we'll roll. So, all right. Grady Kelly, defensive line transfer from Colorado State, committed today. We didn't do a video on this because I knew we'd be going live tonight, and we figured we'd just talk about it here. But Grady Kelly, 6'2", 285-pound defensive lineman, was a redshirt sophomore last year at 35 tackles, a sack and a half, also blocked a kick. Coach Papp has to like that. So really like this replacement, probably for like a Malcolm Ray type. I don't know that you're expecting Kelly to come in and just be he's not Braden Fitz 2.0 this year. Could he be that in 2025? Absolutely. Let's give him some time. Let's let him develop a little bit. But he will be a depth piece for Florida State this year. He will absolutely get in. He will absolutely mix it up. I like this both about Kelly and the next guy that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Indiana running back transfer, Jalen Lucas. Neither one of them tweeted a graphic. Neither one of them tweeted an image. They just came outside of the more and said, like, yeah, I'm committed. Like that, to me, that's kind of cool. Like a little bit more business-like approach. Jalen Lucas commits. He's a running back, kind of gadget player from Indiana. Was originally in Louisiana, Edna Carr, where Destin Hill was. His brother is Ja'Kai Douglas. So I asked people like, oh, man, what's that do to Ja'Kai now that he's the gadget? I don't think that bringing in Lucas is going to hurt anything with Ja'Kai Douglas. Phenomenal kick returner. A lot of people are asking about his punt returning. He has like 14 career punt return yards. Stop asking about that. Put up 591 kick return yards on 22 kick returns. I tweeted one of them. You can go find my profile on Twitter. There's another one that I shared as well where he just is blazing fast. Little guy, but absolutely shot out of a cannon. Just, Mike Norvell tweeted power and speed, and that's certainly what you've gotten with Kelly on the defensive line. Kind of a depth piece there, and as well as Lucas as a kick returner. You need that. You need to continue to improve the depth. You lost some guys in the portal. You lost Malcolm Ray. I saw he committed to Rutgers. So you need to replace that. I think you probably went skill for skill there. I don't know that one is way better than the other. Just being very honest, I don't think Ray is way better than Kelly. I don't think Kelly's way better than Ray. What you do get is an extra year of eligibility because he's got 2 years left. So I think that's a big deal. He could be really, really good for you in 2025, which you need to build. They haven't recruited that position well enough, in my opinion. You're going to have a fine defensive line this year, but when Farmer and Jackson go to the league next year, who are your defensive tackles? I think it's a big deal that you get Kelly in. And then I really like what you can get in the kick return game with Lucas. Richie, any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I think to your point, adding to the depth at the defensive line with Kelly, I think it's a big deal. I think Lucas, he could be kind of like a Ja'Kai Douglas, honestly, in Mike Norvell's offense. He will find ways to use that speed. You mentioned a clip that you tweeted earlier today. The guy's a burner. If he gets in the open field, he is gone. There is no catching him. I'm looking forward to seeing him in Mike Norvell's offense. They will find ways to use him, and I think he is going to be a major asset. And who knows, maybe he will be sprinting to the potatoes in the end zone in Dublin. I cannot wait to see him in Florida State.
That is a heck of a pun there. So people have asked about other positions of need, other targets. I think Florida State's out on the Ole Miss running back, Judkins. What else can we say? Yeah, I think he wanted to come. I think that Florida State just had less interest there for some reasons that, have nothing to do with football. So, yeah, I think Florida State's good on that one. A lot of questions around the Michigan State defensive end. Yeah, possibly. I think the Noles are very much in the thick of that. Obviously, Georgia and Missouri in that as well. Other positions of need, I think that you could use 2 to 3 linebackers. I think you could use 2 more defensive linemen, 1 edge, 1 tackle. I think if you found an absolute superstar at running back or wide receiver, you would not turn them down. I also expect them to get Devontae Brown, who is the DB transfer from Miami. And there's a lot of thoughts, mixed emotions on that. I don't know. I'll save my takes on that for if and when it happens. But, yeah, I think Devontae Brown from Miami probably ends up at Florida State. UCF transfer, who was at Miami last year. Didn't have a great year for Miami. Was really good at UCF. And so hopefully if he does transfer here, you can kind of get that UCF version of him. But, again, 2 linebackers, a defensive tackle, another edge, maybe 2 defensive tackles. I don't know, somewhere in there. Maybe an offensive lineman. And then again, I don't think you have to have a running back or wide receiver, if you got an absolute stud at either one of those positions, you're always looking to raise the ceiling and the floor of any kind of room. I don't think you need a running back. I saw some comments on that. But I do think that Mike Norvell likes to tackle running back by committee. And so if you can get somebody who you think is really, really good and take some of the burden off to Philly and other guys, then you'll do that. You lost Rodney Hill and obviously Trey Benson. So you'll take running backs for the roster just to kind of take loads off other guys. So, Richie, any thoughts on any of those guys? Any shout outs? Anything you want to say before we start to wind down a little bit?
Nope. Shout out to the 2023 NFC South champs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Seahawks are up by 7 right now, or the Cardinals are up on the Seahawks by 7. And did the Packers win? Because the Saints could get in the playoffs as well. No, the Packers won. Never mind, they're out.
I was kind of hoping Jameis would get in, but all good. I don't have any shout outs. Shout out you guys that watch. Shout out you guys that hung out through the live show tonight. Really good numbers tonight. Really fun episode. We're going to try and be very, very consistent, which we have been. The holidays kind of threw us off a little bit. We were going earlier in the day. We're going to try and keep this at 6 p.m. for as long as we can. So set a reminder, set a calendar invite, make it repeating on your phone, whatever you got to do. 6 p.m. Double Fries, No Slaw, live on Sunday nights. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hit the subscribe button on the way out. Most of you guys, listen, I don't mean to call you guys out, but I will listen. We just hit 15,000 subscribers. Like, help us. Like, let's get up to 20 pretty quick. If I look at Richie, when I look at this is terrible live radio because I clicked the wrong button. When I look at the live analytics, like 50% not subscribed. That's actually a pretty good number. But the other 50% of you hit the button. So yeah, I think we need a couple more linebackers to answer the question that we just got there at the end. Man, shout out FSU for not whiffing on quarterbacks and not being the Florida Gators. So we'll talk to you guys next week. Love you. Go Noles.